The locked pool gate. On June 29, 2010, 6-year-old Zachary Archer was playing in his backyard in Phoenix, Arizona. It was a hot summer day, and Zachary wanted to go swimming in the family pool. His mother, Marie, was inside the house preparing lunch. She had told Zachary to wait until she could supervise him, but the boy was impatient. The pool was surrounded by a safety fence with a locked gate, as required by Arizona law. But the lock was broken. Marie had been meaning to fix it for weeks, but kept putting it off. Zachary pushed the gate open and walked to the edge of the pool. He couldn't swim well. He had only taken a few swimming lessons and was still learning. But the water looked inviting, and he was hot. He sat on the edge and dangled his feet in the water. Then he slipped. Zachary fell into the deep end of the pool. Approximately 8 feet deep. He immediately panicked. His arms flailed, and he tried to scream, but water filled his mouth. He sank below the surface. Drowning doesn't look like it does in movies. There's no splashing or yelling. Victims of drowning often slip under the water silently, unable to call for help because their bodies are focused entirely on trying to breathe. Zachary's body went through the stages of drowning. First, he held his breath, his lungs burning for air. This lasted approximately 30 to 60 seconds. Then his body forced him to inhale involuntarily, a reflex called the break point. Water rushed into his lungs. This is called aspiration. The water in his lungs prevented oxygen from reaching his bloodstream. His brain began shutting down from oxygen deprivation. He lost consciousness after approximately 90 seconds underwater, but his heart continued beating for several more minutes. Inside the house, Marie was making sandwiches. She glanced at the clock and realized Zachary had been quiet for too long. She walked outside and saw the pool gate open. She ran to the pool and saw Zachary's body floating face down in the water. She screamed and jumped in, pulling him out. She called 911 and began CPR. Paramedics arrived within 6 minutes. They continued resuscitation efforts, but Zachary's heart had stopped. They transported him to the hospital, where doctors worked for over an hour to revive him. They managed to restart his heart, but Zachary had been without oxygen for too long. He had suffered severe brain damage. He remained in a coma for 3 weeks before his parents made the decision to remove life support. Zachary Archer died on July 18, 2010. The cause of death was drowning due to inadequate supervision and a faulty pool gate lock. If the lock had been working, Zachary would not have been able to access the pool alone. The Riptide Rescue. On July 15, 2013, Thomas Hendricks was vacationing with his family at a beach in North Carolina. The 42-year-old was an experienced swimmer and felt confident in the ocean. That afternoon, his 12-year-old daughter Emma went swimming and got caught in a riptide. A riptide, or rip current, is a powerful channel of water flowing away from shore. It can pull swimmers out to sea at speeds up to 8 feet per second, faster than an Olympic swimmer. Emma screamed for help. Thomas didn't hesitate. He dove into the water and swam toward his daughter. He reached her quickly and grabbed her. But now, both of them were caught in the riptide. Thomas made a critical mistake. He tried to swim directly back to shore, fighting against the current. This is exactly what you should not do in a riptide. The current was too strong. Thomas was a strong swimmer, but he was no match for the ocean. He exhausted himself within minutes, using all his energy trying to swim against the current. His muscles burned with lactic acid, His lungs gasped for air. He was still holding Emma, trying to keep her head above water, but he was drowning. When a person drowns, they go through several stages. First is surprise and panic. Then comes the struggle to stay afloat. Then exhaustion. Finally, submission, when the body gives up. Thomas reached the exhaustion stage. His arms felt like lead. He couldn't keep himself and Emma above water anymore. He made a decision. He pushed Emma away from him, toward shore, using the last of his strength. Then he went under. Emma, now free from her father's grip, was able to float on her back and let the riptide carry her parallel to shore. Eventually, the current weakened, and she was able to swim to safety. Lifeguards pulled her from the water. She was crying, screaming that her father was still out there. Lifeguards and rescue swimmers searched for Thomas. They found his body 20 minutes later, approximately 200 yards from shore, floating face down in the water. They pulled him out and performed CPR, but it was too late. Thomas Hendricks had drowned. The medical examiner determined that he had been underwater for approximately 15 minutes. His lungs were filled with seawater. He had died from aspiration and oxygen deprivation. If Thomas had known the proper technique for escaping a riptide, swimming parallel to shore instead of against the current, both he and his daughter would have survived. The frozen lake. On January 8th, 2011, 3 teenage boys were walking across a frozen lake in Minnesota. Jacob Morrison, 14, Kyle Chen, 15, and Brandon Walsh, 14, were taking a shortcut home from school. The lake had been frozen for weeks, and many people had been walking and skating on it. But the weather had warmed slightly in recent days, weakening the ice. At approximately 4:30 p.m., the boys were halfway across the lake when they heard a cracking sound. Before they could react, the ice beneath Kyle gave way. He fell through into the freezing water below. The water temperature was approximately 33 degrees Fahrenheit, just above freezing. When a person falls into water this cold, their body goes into cold shock. The sudden temperature change causes an involuntary gasping reflex, often causing the person to inhale water. Kyle gasped and inhaled water immediately. He was drowning and freezing simultaneously. Jacob and Brandon tried to help. They crawled toward the hole in the ice, distributing their weight to avoid breaking through themselves. They reached the edge and grabbed Kyle's arms, trying to pull him out. But Kyle was panicking, thrashing in the water. His movements caused more ice to break. Brandon fell through. Now 2 boys were in the freezing water. Jacob screamed for help, but they were in the middle of the lake, far from shore. No one could hear him. Kyle and Brandon were experiencing hypothermia. In water this cold, a person loses dexterity in their hands within minutes. Their muscles stop working properly. They can't swim or grab onto anything. Kyle went under first. His body, exhausted from fighting the cold and the panic, simply gave up. He sank below the surface and didn't come back up. Brandon was still struggling, but he was fading fast. His lips were blue. His eyes were unfocused. Jacob tried to pull him out, but the ice kept breaking. Then Brandon stopped moving. His body went limp and slipped beneath the water. Jacob was alone, lying on the ice, staring at the hole where his 2 friends had just disappeared. He crawled backward, away from the hole, and ran to shore. He called 911. Emergency responders arrived within 15 minutes. Divers entered the freezing water and searched for the boys. They found Kyle's body approximately 30 feet from the hole, at the bottom of the lake. They found Brandon's body 50 feet away. Both boys were dead. The medical examiner determined that both had died from drowning, complicated by hypothermia. Kyle had been underwater for approximately 20 minutes. Brandon had been underwater for approximately 15 minutes. If the boys had known not to walk on ice that had been weakened by warming temperatures, or if they had known proper ice rescue techniques, they might have survived. The flash flood. On September 14, 2015, a group of hikers were exploring a slot canyon in Utah. Slot canyons are narrow gorges carved by water, with walls that can be hundreds of feet tall and only a few feet apart. They're popular with hikers and photographers, but they're also extremely dangerous during rainstorms. The group consisted of 7 people, including 29-year-old Linda Carmichael and her husband Steve. They had checked the weather forecast that morning, which called for clear skies. What they didn't know was that a storm system had developed unexpectedly 20 miles away. At approximately 2 p.m., while the group was deep in the canyon, rain began falling upstream. The rain was heavy, dumping inches of water in a short time. That water had nowhere to go except down into the canyon. Flash floods in slot canyons can occur with little warning. Water from miles away can funnel into the narrow gorge, creating a wall of water that moves at incredible speed. The hikers heard it before they saw it. A roaring sound, like a freight train, echoing through the canyon. Then they saw the water, a wall of brown, churning water, at least 10 feet tall, rushing toward them at approximately 20 miles per hour. There was nowhere to run. The canyon walls were too steep to climb. The group tried to move to higher ground, but the water reached them in seconds. Linda was swept off her feet immediately. The force of the water was like being hit by a car. She tumbled underwater, unable to tell which way was up. The water was filled with debris, rocks, and branches that battered her body. She tried to swim, but the current was too strong. She was carried downstream, slammed against canyon walls, dragged over rocks. She managed to get her head above water and gasp for air, but then another wave pushed her under. Flash flood water is different from regular water. It's thick with sediment, almost like liquid mud. It's harder to swim in and easier to drown in. Linda's lungs filled with the muddy water. She was drowning, but she was also being battered by the flood. Her body was slammed against a rock wall with such force that her ribs broke. She was carried further downstream, her body limp, no longer fighting. The flood lasted approximately 15 minutes. When it subsided, rescue teams entered the canyon. They found 4 survivors, including Steve, who had managed to climb to a small ledge. They found 3 bodies, including Linda's. Her body was wedged between 2 rocks, half submerged in the remaining water. The medical examiner determined that Linda had died from drowning and blunt force trauma. Her lungs were filled with muddy water. Her body showed multiple fractures and contusions from being battered by the flood. If the group had been aware of the flash flood danger and had checked weather conditions for the entire region, not just their immediate location, they would not have entered the canyon that day. The Bathtub Drowning. On March 3, 2009, 18-month-old Sophia Martinez was taking a bath. Her mother, Carmen, was bathing her in the family's bathroom in their apartment in Los Angeles. Sophia loved bath time. She played with her toys while Carmen washed her. At approximately 7:15 p.m., Carmen's phone rang. It was in the living room. Carmen hesitated. She knew she shouldn't leave Sophia alone in the bath, even for a second, but she thought it might be important. She stood up and walked to the living room to get her phone. She was gone for less than 30 seconds. When she returned, Sophia was face down in the water. Carmen screamed and pulled her daughter out. Sophia wasn't breathing. Her lips were blue. Carmen called 911 and began CPR. She had taken a CPR class years ago, but couldn't remember the exact technique. She tried her best, giving rescue breaths and chest compressions. Paramedics arrived within 5 minutes. They took over resuscitation efforts. Sophia's heart had stopped. They managed to restart it and rushed her to the hospital. Doctors worked for hours to save her. Sophia had been without oxygen for approximately 3 to 4 minutes. Her brain had suffered damage. She remained on life support for 2 days before doctors determined that she had no brain activity. Carmen and her husband made the heartbreaking decision to remove life support. Sophia Martinez died on March 5, 2009. The cause of death was drowning. Children can drown in as little as 2 inches of water. It happens silently and quickly. Sophia had likely slipped while playing, gone underwater, and been unable to right herself. The entire drowning took less than 2 minutes. If Carmen had not left the bathroom, even for those 30 seconds, Sophia would still be alive. If you want to see more videos like this, click the video on screen now and make sure to subscribe.